My name is Rachel Genn and I'm a writer. But in a previous life I was a neuroscientist and I was a research academic for a long time. A lot of what I studied and what was fascinating to me in a poetic sense as well has been brought over into my new life as a writer. I do deal with regret a lot in my novels, and I thought that I might try to investigate the nature and function of regret, which I've become very interested in my fiction and non-fiction, through art. Regret is the emotion that is produced, and it's a universal thing, everyone experiences it. It's the emotion that's produced when the outcome of a decision that you have had the chance to make is not the one you wished it had been, and you have to know that you did have the chance to make a different decision to experience regret. I conceived of a fake institute called the National Facility for the Regulation of Regret, or the NFRR. And it seemed to me that this would be a great way to make ideas that I'd had for a long time about the nature and function of regret stand up. And it became attractive to me as a proposition, an artistic proposition. So I imagined fake characters for this quasi-institution, and they each had their own regret-related disturbances. It's been a huge collaboration with several different artists, game makers, illustrators, and one of the most fantastic parts of getting this installation together has been the unexpected, emergent properties of work that has come out of conversations between myself and the artists. So hopefully it's kind of a layered installation where these stories are narrated by the objects that can be seen within this quasi-institution. This is the room of Lassie Fortune. It's a woman called Alison Bartholomew who calls herself Lassie Fortune in an attempt to get away from who she really is. So a lot of what she is making in her art show is about identity and how she can keep moving to keep regret at bay. So she kind of keeps anticipated regret at arm's length by changing the way she looks, who she is, as often as possible. And a lot of the artwork does reflect that. And here in her room you can see that she's got things like, over there's some Fix-A-Flat, which some people inject their buttocks with that. The internet can tell you, to have a fuller behind, shall we say. And Lassie is into anything that means she can change herself quickly and easily. So I wanted to mix up the kind of like feminine and the horrific there, and the extent, to kind of create extremes to which people can go to feel acceptable, even to themselves. This is some of the art therapy for a character called Johnny Monroe, who is, his little script is over here. He's a soap actor, and he has been for a long time obsessed by Jarvis Cocker, and despite his own fame he feels the need to step into someone else's. And Jarvis Cocker, I chose Jarvis because he's so well loved by almost everyone that I felt he was kind of like an every celeb. And so I asked Joanna Walsh, the illustrator, if she would come up with some renditions of Jarvis and some costumes for him, which we could use as the art therapy for this particular character. So he's made a little soft toy Jarvis and a bed to lay beside him while he's here. And he signs himself in and out over the years, and as you can see from his his sign-in sheet on the door. He's been coming here for a number of years now. He's also worked with a video game maker, Ben Sutcliffe in this case, to make an Oculus Rift game where you can stalk a character, and the therapeutic part of this comes in that once you begin to stalk a character, you become the stalkee. So as you play the game, you realise actually you're being stalked as well. So that is how that works for this character. So yeah. One of the things that came out of this collaboration with Joanna is when we were deciding how big Jarvis should be, we decided to make him slightly diminutive so that he's more controllable. He's almost like Johnny's puppet. So yeah, he'd like to have a say in what Jarvis wears, what he thinks, and as is often the case with these compulsions, and I've worked with clinical psychologists over the last year to look at the what really happens in patients with obsessions, for instance, and stalkers, is that they begin to think that there's a special bond between themselves and the person who is the focus of that obsession. This is Carl's room. He's a gambler. He's just had his phone confiscated, and he is absolutely crippled by his superstition. So on the floor down here we've got a grid with personal items placed in a particular arrangement, and they are also represented here. He's got a bit of a feng shui kind of feeling about his room, in that when things are laid out in a particular way, perhaps he wins with Paddy Power. When the room is arranged differently, his pictures away from the wall towards the wall, you might get lucky with William Hill. So he maps out his wins and losses in respect of the way his room is arranged. He's got his little gloves over there which are pinned together, which he uses to stop himself from going online and doing his bingo or whatever he does on that particular day. So it's a constant struggle for these people. And that's something that I wanted to bring out theory-wise, that regret can motivate people as well as inhibit their behaviours. Because I feel like a lot of what I'm trying to do here is to give clues and not really answer questions, but to get people asking questions about the characters, their motivations, how they fit into this institution. This is part of Lassie Fortune's first solo show, Clutches and Exhausts, and this particular one, which I've called The Match, which is Your Arse, My Face, was done by an artist called Sally Wickenden, and I asked her if she could do Lassie's. We talked about who Lassie was over weeks and weeks, and she emerged between us, and she I said, can you do a collage, please, of Lassie's face from Heat magazine? And I actually have never read Heat magazine, but I can imagine the kind of thing it is, and I thought there would be lots of flesh in there to use. So she did, and I said, oh, how was that? I texted her, and she's like, oh, okay, which was a very, she seemed very forlorn. She seemed very downbeat about the whole thing. So I asked her why she felt so down about the whole experience of making this collage, and she talked about how depressing it had been to read parts of Heat magazine. So I said, well, why don't you burn the bits of Heat magazine that are left, mix them with whatever artists mix things with, like pigment and oil or whatever, and come up with some abstract portraits of Lassie. And she did. And here is a first, Cellulite, and here are two more smaller abstracts, Subdermal 1 and 2, which we both love a lot. And these represent like one of the most fantastic surprises about collaborating with a visual artist in this project. This is a kind of mixed media piece, 100 portraits that Lassie has put together, and it's called Don't Stop, which is a kind of like the idea of a compulsion being circuitous, that you can't really get out of it. And obviously these portraits show that she has many incarnations. She's changing all the time, and she wants to put these beside each other as kind of testament to that. So it's kind of like a victory and a defeat in one, really, for her. This is a part of Lassie's show which she's called Hairy, which is a double entendre on the word, meaning, and it's about her past. So her past is quite a dark place, I imagine, from these pictures. It's kind of like family therapy meets art therapy in here. So she's depicted her kind of like place in the family through pictures of hairs from the bathtub, some of them more intriguing than others. And she's using this area to kind of relive what it was like growing up for her. It's impossible not to deal with your past through your art. I mean, everything is refracted through the self in one way or another. So I kind of like the idea that she has almost in a naive way approached her past head on in this part of the show. It's really been a fantastic way for me to explore another medium of telling stories, and I have come up against lots of obstacles, but I have also been surprised in so many ways at how stories will reveal themselves in this new medium, for me anyway. And I hope that this is the basis of something bigger. I hope this is a seed from which other things grow. Collaborating with artists has showed me that often what is inside my head is only the beginning of what ends up being the finished piece. People who have a lot of regret in their pasts, I've got a lot to say and a lot to explore through art or writing. I think art should always raise questions, number one, but I don't particularly want this to be a fully explained journey through a fake institution. Rather, I would like people to reflect on these problems that I'm trying to narrate for these particular people, and for people to see that obsessive problems or addictions or regret-related disturbances often don't just appear in isolation. They're often layered on top of each other, and so addiction should not be just shoved away to one particular department of a hospital, or we should look at the humanness behind the problems and realise that humans are just made up of their problems.